The owner is also on the call, and I'd like to thank you again for your partnership and your support during this time. And Pat, I would just like to call on you to introduce Gunjan, and I'm very much looking forward to this conversation on changing consumer expectations. So Pat.
Okay, thank you very much, Tracy, for that intro. And good morning, everyone. Just so you know, yes, the hotel is open. It has been open since the beginning. And we saw a really big dip in the beginning, and then we saw a nice little incline. And then, you know, the second wave, or the fear of the second wave, hit, and we've certainly seen another dip. And it is starting to bounce back a little slowly, creepily, that's not the right word. It's creeping up slowly. We do, you know, we are seeing some businesses come back, some construction workers, some long-term stay people, and also people who are here to go to South Lake for procedures. So just so you know, we do have a discounted rate for hospital stays as well. Unfortunately, the Buttery is closed for the next, I guess, 27 days. But when it does reopen, please come and visit. They have amazing food. I would like to give a one shout out to a chamber member, Collier Photography. He came in and did new photos for our property of all the different room types. So that was interesting. I got to play photographer's assistant for a few days. And if you want to see our new photos, just look at any online travel agency, booking.com or something like that. And I just wanted to say one more thing. I really do suggest, as the mayor was saying, like, we do have to be as inventive as possible, and just really encourage everyone to brainstorm, not just with your employees and your staff, but friends, family, people in other businesses, because, you know, that's how you get fresh ideas. And sometimes it's really surprising what other people can come up with, because they have a completely different view on your business, or they don't know your business, so they may suggest things that you would never have thought of, but actually they work. And just before I introduce Gunjan, I wanted to say that I read an article this morning. It was on CBC, and unfortunately it was about some people who had lost their business, they had to close their business during the pandemic. But the one guy quotes, or the quote from one guy is that, "When a business closes down, it feels like a huge loss of yourself," he said. "But we're more than the job we do or the business that we own. And there's more value to life than the business, even though when you're in the middle of it, it can be hard to make that distinction." So with that, I'm going to introduce Gunjan. Gunjan Syal has led transformations for at least 24 clients in 9 industries, worth up to 150 million across the US and Canada. She is a strategy, governance, and planning advisor for the C-level on organizational transformations. Gunjan transforms businesses by bridging business and technology conversations with a product mindset. With 14 years of consulting experience, including IBM and Accenture, Gunjan brings success by connecting people, methodology, and technology. Her success stories span technology, retail, financial services, healthcare, consulting, transportation, and public sectors, everything but the kitchen sink, I think. Gunjan has created a dynamic framework to enable transformations post-COVID and founded a transformational think tank to openly share it in support of the economic growth. Her experience brings a holistic perspective to our client engagements. Gunjan is also a seasoned board member, leading organizations to become agile, product-oriented, and innovative towards positive client experience, strategic, operational, and financial excellence. So Gunjan, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Pat, for a very humbling introduction. I'll just go ahead and share my screen. And while I'm doing that, I do want to point out it's quite interesting to be here and hear from the mayor directly, as well as from the staff and members of the chamber. One of the most interesting things is I think everybody around the table is impacted by COVID in one way or another. And as a small business owner myself, as part of this presentation, as much as I'm here to share the data and some other aspects with you, it'd be very interesting to hear your personal stories, and I'll definitely be bringing some of that color to the conversation myself. So this is a very interactive conversation, as we were discussing at the start of the session. Please do raise your hand or jump right in, unmute yourself. And Tracy as well will be talking about PPE and some of the other things that you keep in mind as we're moving ahead. So as Mayor said, it's not so much about where the puck currently is, but we need to think about where it's going to be. So initially I thought that I'll start with this chart with you, and there's a lot going on there. But I just wanted to share this with you as an appreciation of what was happening at the level at the start of the stage 2. Because for better or for worse, at least in North America, we were all kind of at that cusp together. And I chose this chart specifically because I was talking to Aptis and Tracy before this session, and they pointed out some of the industries that are more typical in Ontario for small business owners. So for instance, you will see the automotive suppliers there, you would see the manufacturers, you would see gaming, which is more, I guess, from a software point of view. You also see the oil and gas, you see the property developers, steel producers. Personally, I fall under the service companies there with moderate exposure. But you also see some of the industries that we've been talking about, the food and the food retailers, right? That's where the restaurants would fall in. Retail from a non-food perspective, airlines, which are a much larger industry, are there as well. So this is quite interesting to take a stock of where things were at the beginning. But the more interesting piece is actually what landed in my inbox yesterday from Conference Board of Canada. So this data is important from 2 points of views. So first, if you compare this to the previous chart that I shared with you, this is Canada specific data, first of all. And secondly, this is very new. Like I said, it literally just came out on October 15th. And one of the biggest shifts that's happened in most industries lately, especially for small to medium businesses, is going remote, right? So larger companies that had the economies of scale, that had the ability to send their workers to go work from home with a laptop, they were able to manage that. But if you look at some of the other industries like art, entertainment, and recreation, I think that was one of the industries that was very impacted by going remote, because all of their revenue is dependent on people going to the theaters, going to the galleries to interact with them. So you can also see there's 5 different dimensions that this chart is showing you. It's showing you the extent of where some of those industries were able to go fully remote or mostly remote, being able to create a mix of on-site and remote, mostly on-site or fully on-site. So you can see the retail piece at the bottom, mostly on-site, because you need to be at the location to be able to support the customer. So at this point, Tracy, I don't know if you would have any specific thoughts on or examples where maybe we compare this chart to what you're seeing in the region or in your market. Where would you place our small businesses?
In terms of, again, are you saying in terms of who's gone remote?
In terms of how it's impacting us, right? So if I look at retail, for example, since you have to be fully on site, if I extrapolate that, your revenue is still very, very dependent on foot traffic, right? That's how you're currently making money, and there's no way around that. So if I think about it from a customer trust or customer confidence point of view, I would need to, for a retail business, take into account things like PPE, right, that we have mentioned. Whereas if I'm able to go online more in cultural industries, I would need to take a different strategy and a different approach to build trust with my customers online through maybe social media channels, or how easy it is for them to find my products and my services. For retail, that's good.
I think any of it right now from a risk perspective is part of the constantly changing consumer expectations. And I think that's what we need to realize as businesses. I mean, for retail, people need to be comfortable. There's that trust, there's that relationship piece. And when I say consumers' expectations are changing, I think we all know that you go from store to store or place to place, and as the next person raises the bar on the way that they're wearing masks or shields or how they've separated it or their signage, then it changes your expectations, and suddenly
Right.
that's your expectation of everyone. So if I'm not feeling as good as I did in that best store, then I'm going to, rethink about how I'm purchasing and where I'm purchasing. And that's incredible pressure on businesses because you're being constantly, continually judged on a target. You don't even know that target.
Absolutely. So this just gives you, I would say, a direction towards what some of the other companies may be doing in Canada in your same industry, I would say, right? So I'm not sure, for example, how many people on this call are in arts, entertainment, and recreation. So you can see that a portion of those people have found a way to go fully remote. Most of them have found a way to go mostly remote. Some have, actually none have found a way to be equally mix of on-site and remote, which is quite interesting for that particular industry. Some of them are still mostly on-site, and some of them are fully on-site. So it's quite interesting to see what strategies these people may be using, because I think we even had a question earlier for Mayor. If you look at from a personal fitness and training point of view, where some of those gym facilities land currently today, people who can afford one-on-one fitness. Are you able to provide counseling to them remotely? How far does that go before you need to see them in person?
I mean, I think we'll look to see from others, but I mean, part of that challenge, Gunjan, is even if they found a way to kind of bring those services online, monetizing that is another question. I mean, we've done virtual events as well, but I haven't seen many that have been able to monetize that either. So it's, I mean, this is an interesting chart, but I mean, pulling in revenues would against that would also be interesting, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the harder part of any business, right? Especially when you're encountering that disruption and change. The first little while of it, you're not sure if you would be able to monetize that right away. So sometimes you have to try many different things, and that effort, it's not really so much the wasted effort, but it's that learning effort, right? You take the chance and try it out, find different business models. So one additional portion that I found interesting on the same study by Conference Board of Canada was also about all these businesses that are able to leverage online and are able to monetize, as you said, Tracy. 72% of them are also quite concerned about the security online, right? So if you are a business that wasn't really online to begin with, that's a little bit that you have now. When you're going online, how are you going to secure your data? Transactions are happening online with credit cards. So the good news is there's a lot of tools and services already available to help you do that. So I just wanted to put that out there as well, something to keep at the back of your mind as you're exploring those digital channels, not to forget that.
Can I jump in for a second, Gunjan? I run a hotel, which is a business that cannot provide its services remotely.
Mm-hmm.
And the key challenge that we have been facing since the very beginning of COVID was actually our employees. And there are a number of other businesses like that for whom not only getting the guests in, which is obviously a challenge, and Pat alluded to it, but also making sure that our employees feel safe. And this was one of the biggest challenge for us. Our employees cannot work remotely. You cannot clean the room via your laptop. I will give $1 billion to invent an app allowing that. The other issue, which I would like to draw attention to everybody on this call, is I think we are going to see a major fallout longer term in insurance premiums. We are already seeing it, and one of them is the cybersecurity issue. It's going to be growing exponentially, in my opinion. And I think a lot of insurance companies are going to start looking at the fact that that this totally unknown risk a few months ago has created so much havoc. So I urge everyone to look at their insurance issues. But finally, I think that the key element from our point of view is maintaining our staff loyalty. And if you run a business which requires your staff to be on site, this is an absolutely essential element to keep in mind. How do you keep your people safe and feeling safe and also committed? And unfortunately, at the beginning of the programs, some of the employees were incentivized to stay at home by the federal government help instead of coming and risking their thing. And so the decision makers, and I'm here talking to Dawn, should always look at that the cure is not worse than the disease. And luckily we managed to pass through it. And final word I would like to address to Dawn is I think the federal and provincial governments should look a little bit more at a rifle approach vis-a-vis shotgun approach in dealing with COVID. I do understand the statistics, but I understand that there were only 19 cases in Ontario tied to restaurant business, and all the restaurants were closed. So maybe looking at more of a targeted approach, focused approach, would do less harm to some industries than this big hammer shotgun approach. Anyway, thank you.
Right, Tracy or Dawn, anything to add to Merrick's comments?
I think from the insurance standpoint, we've been hearing a lot about that recently, Mark, and it has come up at the Canadian Chamber and Ontario Chamber conversations. We are hearing it's not just, we're hearing tourism and hospitality being hit, not-for-profits. I think it's coming across the board on the insurance premiums. So that is one that we have been looking at. And I think your point about employees and keeping them feeling safe, but I think even beyond that, we've also got the issue of managing remote teams and keeping that same kind of committed team and collaborative team that may have been in place prior to COVID, and that's slowly fading away, and it's becoming a real challenge for employers. So that's another area that we're looking at as well. Dawn, did you have anything?
My only comment would be totally understand and appreciate what you're saying, Merrick. And I'm not the elected official. I run the constituency office for MPP Christine Elliott, just so that's clear. But obviously, following the provincial message, one of the challenges is that I hear you talking about the 19 people through the restaurants. What's happening is people who are getting infected, it's spreading to long-term care settings, congregate care settings, our most vulnerable people. That's the challenge, and that's where now in this modified stage 2 for long-term care homes, retirement homes, the congregate settings, all of the personal visitations, taking them out of the home, that has now all ceased to get a handle on our most vulnerable, the ones who are most susceptible to this. So I think that's where part of the challenge is that if you go to a restaurant and you get infected and you're asymptomatic and all of a sudden you're with somebody else, it passes on, and then that person goes and visits somebody, their grandmother in the long-term care home. Now all of a sudden you've got somebody infected and the wheel just keeps going. So trust me, I hear what you're saying, and on the employee note, keeping them committed, keeping them understanding, you know, we're here for a service for people to come in, just like your hotel. It's a challenge. I've spoken with a friend who's an executive at TD Insurance, and talking about insurance and what's going on there. There's challenges everywhere in now managing your staff remotely and what it's going to take to bring that staff back in. So I'm hearing it across the board, what people are dealing with. And I totally believe we're going to have greater impacts probably in 6 to 8 months, trying to get ourselves back to some type of normal office or work environment where people are really collaborating more on a face-to-face level once we're able to do that. Anyways, those are my comments.
And very, very apt comments, right, Dawn and Tracy. While we're on the subject, I'm just wondering if you could really quickly point out 2 or 3 things, actionable things, that people do to ensure safety of their employees. I think PPE is a bigger one, right, where if you're dealing with, let's say, security guards or people that are working at a particular desk where they don't have to move around a lot, and they're greeting people, I could see PPE playing a big role in the retail and security. But if you're dealing with, let's say, hotel type situation that Merrick described, where people actually have to move around, what are some of the things that they could do, actionable things?
Well, I'm sure Merrick has probably had conversations with his employees. I mean, there are visual things you can do, and you know, I don't think you can't discount visuals right now. You know, that is very much tied to what people believe is safety. I mean, you go into a restaurant where somebody's wearing a shield and their mouth is exposed at the bottom versus a mask, and there's perceptions on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't think as employers we can underscore how to feel. I mean, when we first went into this, you know, we said, here's some of the things we're going to be doing for our employees, and then asked for their comments on what could we do for them to feel safe. And I think as employers, we need to have those conversations. You know, make sure that you're screening everybody who comes in.
Right.
I mean, just, you don't have to screen them every single day, but have it posted, have it sent out to them via email saying, you know, each day before you come in, do this screening for yourself. And if you don't pass, don't come in, you know, making masks available to them, not expecting them to get those, signage on the floor saying, you know, don't enter. If it's a building where you can lock the doors to the public, lock the doors to the public. You know, or only accept by appointment. It's the perception of what you're doing. So, I mean, there's clear guidelines available on the provincial site, on the York Region site. We have links to them on the chamber site. But I think it goes beyond that. It's taking that to the next level. And, you know, go into places that you've seen that made you feel safe. Some banks are better than others. Some financial planners are better than others, and that's what not only people, but we're consumers too. So your employees are consumers. So it's how safe they feel somewhere else compared to in your building. And that's the thing about expectations, Gunjan, as you know, perception is reality. So, and unfortunately, we don't have the same perception and the same reality. And that's what employers are having to deal with. And that's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So that takes us to the concept of the concerned customer, but also the concerned employee, right, Tracy? And you, Abdus, and I were having these conversations sort of offline, and we're talking about that already. So I jumped forward to that slide. What are some of the things that we need to keep in mind, right? Because making information available, making sure that we're collecting that feedback from them frequently, and then adjusting our approach. There's no one answer to this situation because it's a continuously developing situation. So we start with where we are today. We take a stock of what's happening around us. How are people reacting? As you said, Tracy, even look at other businesses. Where are people feeling safe versus what are people hesitant about? They may not be able to exactly tell you what they're hesitant about, but noticing their behaviors, right? That's kind of the moral of the story during the pandemic. being able to read in between the lines, and then approaching both the customers and the employees with that care and concern. So putting yourself in their shoes and saying, my partners, my community, my customers, employees, how are they feeling? And then making that very specific to your industry and to your business even more specifically. Then to me, connecting with people on their own terms is the other point, right? So we sort of talked about that earlier as well when we were chatting with the mayor. Are people in certain cases feeling more comfortable at their home? Are they feeling more comfortable with certain services online? Are they looking for touch-free, or are they actually looking for high care? And to me, that touch-free versus high care are two separate things, right? You can provide high care to someone without having an in-person interaction with them in some cases. But in some other cases, like in hotels, you really can't. Because if I'm looking for a clean room, I'm looking for a clean room. You can't provide that to me with a laptop. But being able to work with your employees to coordinate that specifically. And that conversation might be, how are we approaching it this week with modified stage 2 versus how are we doing it before in stage 3? What are the specific things we need to change? Tracy, maybe that's installing PPE or bringing it back if you had sort of phased it off a little bit in stage 3. I've definitely noticed that in my condo itself. At one point when we entered stage 3, we got rid of how many people could be in an elevator at a time. So now that regulation or that guiding principle, call it, is back, right? So it's getting people to adjust to that. They're not going to like waiting for a second elevator for sure, right? But getting them to appreciate why that's happening and how to adjust to that, that would be quite interesting. And then considering the long term, right? As again, Mayor had said, don't just look at where the puck is, but where do you need it to be? And what's happening all around you during those conversations. So rethinking what kind of customer experience or employee experience do you want to offer? And then working with Tracy, Aptis, and the team, what are the support items that are available to you? And also exploring those new options with the group to figure out what will drive your business forward. So I think this is where a lot of new business models can come into play as well, right? So someone had shared earlier with the mayor, maybe either creating a local delivery type of a service, which could possibly be either subsidized by the government or maybe supported by the government in some way, keeping in mind that they're also a business, right? So you can't support one business at the cost of another. You have to look at the math overall. But maybe there's those type of options we can explore, how the entire ecosystem works together. So Tracy, would you have any thoughts on specific conversations that are happening these days that businesses could look to?
Sorry, can I just chime in?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Tracy.
No, go ahead.
There's a lag. Sorry, I just heard Gunjan's comment on Tracy. So if you wanted to go first, then I can go after.
No, go ahead, Aptis, because we're coming up on time anyway. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we get any key points across.
Okay, so just building on a lot of what's already been discussed and the PPE angle that Tracy mentioned and has emphasized over and over again in our town halls, that's critical. But beyond just the employee and conveying it to the customers through word of mouth is important, but everything's digital these days. You mentioned online presence. Pre-COVID, if you didn't have an online presence, I mean, it was concerning depending on demographics. Now having an online presence is far more than just having a website. It's having a robust social media strategy that's conveying to the customer, because that's how you reach customers right now, right? You don't have walk-in traffic anymore. A lot of the restrictions make that kind of impossible. Some customers just, by and large, want to avoid dense pockets. So how do you get that customer in through the door and convey to them that you are doing everything in your power to ensure a safe customer experience? So that's the social media angle. And you know what? The reality is this strategy won't work for every sector, but it can work for almost every sector.
Right.
showing to the customer via social media that you have done, you know, let's say like in the case of a restaurant, that you are spraying the tables, and
Mhm.
you know, the tables are set a space apart appropriately. You're following all public health guidelines. That they are walking into a place that there is almost no chance they are going to contact COVID from.
Right.
And I just want to, and Gunjan, you can, you'd be more familiar with this than I am, but Instagram demographics. So in 2015, the average user was 18 to 29, and 30 to 49 was only about 28% of Instagram's user base. In
Right.
2020, 75% are 18 to 24-year-olds. 18 to 24-year-olds use Instagram. 57% of 25 to 30-year-olds use Instagram, and more importantly, that 20% user base in 2015 has grown to 47% for 30 to
Mhm.
49-year-olds. And a lot of that 30 to 49-year-old demographic is key here because they have purchasing power. If you're
Right.
not able to reach that customer through Instagram or any kind of social media, then you're losing a valuable chunk of
Absolutely.
right. And just building on the comment on how you convey that, there's tons of tried and tested strategies. You can do A and B testing through a lookalike audience. You use Instagram, tie it to your Facebook. You build the lookalike audience, you do A and B testing, and the strategy that works best, which in this case is like the ads that people are clicking on are actually watching more often than the other one, is what you would run the Facebook targeted campaign on.
Yeah. To be honest, Baptist, it's quite simple, right? I'll tell you, like, as a small business owner myself, and even as a consumer, I was never actually even on Instagram before this. I've actually joined Instagram for the specific purpose of looking at my local businesses without having the ability to go into them and see what's happening right now, putting myself at risk. So I actually use the Instagram right now to see what are they posting every day. And if I can compare shop what's happening in one restaurant versus the other. So just the fact that they're on there and they're posting every day about how they're keeping their customers and their employees safe makes me want to go in there and see what's happening, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the simplest thing. Just create a presence, post on there every day, every morning, whatever it is, once a day. And that's really enough. And then you can get more sophisticated with it, as Aptus said, right? You can building the integration between Instagram and Facebook and some of the other things. One example that I could give you, I have a fair bit of family in India, and banking there was all in person. There's no online banking there, right? They don't even have the chip cards that we have in Canada. Okay, you got to go into the bank, into the branch, you know what? And now it's all on WhatsApp Business. So I was supposed to go to India in May and I couldn't, but the banking person authenticated me via WhatsApp. They talked to me via WhatsApp. They sent me all the paperwork via WhatsApp. It's all encrypted, right? So I'm a technology person. I know I kind of feel safe with it. But for customers who may not know that, I will give you another example. A Canadian bank, I moved at the start of COVID, my banking from one to another. And every bank that I called basically said, come into the branch, sign paperwork. I said, no, I'm not going to do that, except for one bank. And what they did is they sent me all the paperwork via Zoom. We had a video call just like this one, showed me all of the paperwork. When it came time to sign the paperwork, they actually drove over, came downstairs to my condo building. All I had to do was step out, say hi, make sure it's the same person, show them my driver's license, sign the paperwork, and hand it back to them. For a small business who may not have economy from a digital point of view, if you're able to offer that type of support to a customer, I think that would be to your advantage. So thinking about how to connect with the customer on their own terms would be huge. So I know we're a bit over time, so I want to stop there and just hand it back to Tracy and to App to see if there's any final thoughts on this topic.
I think we are at time. So I think it's, I would rather say, I know if people have to go, I thank you for your time and understand that. If you want to stay on and you have any questions for Gunjan or discussion points, we will save what's in the chat. I see some pieces on the IT security side that Bob Kirakides put in there, which I think is interesting as well, because when we're thinking about the safety of our employees, those that are working remotely at home are also part of that safety. And he made some good points about business type firewalls that can be installed into homes, which is interesting as well, because that's a safety factor. Many of your employees are now at home working.
Mhm.
New can of personal space and personal information that is now a concern as well. So there's some really good points on there, for sure. Were there any questions in the chat, Jennifer, that you saw coming up, or anything that I need to?
Tracy, can
Yeah.
I do a quick? Oh, yeah. Sorry. So a lot of what was discussed and a lot of what Gunjan covered is if you're new to social media, it can be incredibly complex. Please reach out to her. She does a fantastic job. I'm connected with Gunjan on LinkedIn, and that's where I get my tidbits information on how to approach this. But if you are looking for the how-tos on how this will work, how you can do this, how you can implement it, Gunjan mentioned support. Folks, there has been a lot of support that's been put out there for the business community, including the Recovery Activation Program. I've just put in a link. It is the best way of looking at it is an accelerator. It puts you in, first you complete a DNA test, digital needs assessment, which identifies where you are on your digital journey. They say journey, I think it's cringeworthy, but best way of looking at it. And it identifies exactly what you need for your business. Now, if we're talking social media strategy, I mentioned lookalike audience. Those are little tidbits. This can be incredibly complex, but ultimately can be a huge revenue driver once it's properly established. This program will get you from step A to step B to step C, and then if you already have systems in place, it'll connect all that. I encourage you all to complete the DNA test. It is completely free of cost. Originally, something like this would cost about $2,500. FedDev has sponsored it. It is completely free for businesses. It connects you with experts who can guide you through the process and help you build out your strategy from a very much a concierge-based approach. So if you have any questions on that, please reach out to me. I have put my email in the chat box, and I will be sending out that email regarding all the programs that I had mentioned earlier. Tracy, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you. Abdus, I didn't see a link to the wrap in the chat that you mentioned, but that is a good point. We also have social school on a regular basis that's run with one of our members, Holly Holdley from Creative Solutions. So there are lots of openings and opportunities for you. And again, Gunjan, thank you for your time today. Do you have anything that you wanted to wrap up?
No, I just wanted to say this meeting was so wonderful to bring all the information and even to have Mayor speak about what's coming up and his ability to talk to every single one of us as business owners, right? I really appreciated that. So thank you, Tracy, for including me. And please feel free to reach out to me as well. If I can support our local community in some way, I'd be very happy to do so. I'll put my email address in the chat for you as well.
Thank you. And one last plea from me to the businesses on the line. I am looking for businesses from 1 employee right up to 499 to take part in a skills study that we're doing with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce and Ryerson University Diversity Institute. We really want it to be focused on small businesses and what they need in the future. I know we're very much in a pandemic and very concentrated on that right now, but we do have a future to build. So if you can participate in it, it's very short. It's very specific. Just leave me your name in the chat and I'll reach out to you, or send me an email, Tracy, TRACY at newmarketchamber.ca. And I would love to have you participate in that skills study. We need 50 local companies. I think we have about 20 or 25 right now. So I am putting that out there as a plea. Finally, we will have a shop local program. We're going to do a holiday gift guide that will enable you to click right on some great local ideas for your holiday shopping. That's coming out shortly. It's an online platform, so easy ways to support local. The town is also going to open up a local directory. So all of these things will definitely help. And thank you all for participating today. And our Business Excellence Awards will be a virtual event November 25th. So join us for a holiday themed Business Excellence Award. And I hope we'll see you online soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Stay safe.
Bye, everyone.